amazing session about using beads in crochet garments, you will know that it is something you absolutely can do, and it is something you absolutely should do. Molly, I've never done it. Why have I never done it?
I don't know. You know what? Have you crocheted with beads at all?
Yes, but on like a bag, you know, a teeny little.
So that's all it is. Like, you know, the ironic thing, I don't remember what I did in this video or not, but the very first pattern I ever had published was a pair of fingerless gauntlets. So like think of fingerless gloves that went up to here, right?
Right.
And the only way that I could think of to make them different enough that interweave crochet would pick them up was to add a bead inside the gauntlet. So they were beaded, crocheted fingerless gauntlets. And so the ironic thing is my very first published pattern included beads. So
and it was picked the right subject.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's just really all it is, though. It's just looking at your fabric and thinking, where could I add a bead here that it would, you know, add to the I want to say the value of the garment or whatever it is, you know, so it doesn't distract. Make sure it doesn't weigh it down too much, because they are heavy when it all comes down to it. And just, you know, I like a little glitz and glam. So, you know, they're fun. You could absolutely add some beads to things.
Well, I was thinking that on that when I put this on this morning, I was like, "Ooh, I could just a gentle one here or there, like a bit of glitz and glamour."
Yep.
I like the idea. I like the idea, and I like the idea of what you were saying in the video of like start slow. You know, do a small project first.
Yes.
Don't go for it with a garment to begin with.
Right. And I mean, you absolutely have to be careful. Like do a little swatch to make sure, you know, the weight of it. Can your yarn withstand the weight of it? Because it would look really tacky if like everything was all nice and tight, and then all of a sudden you had like a droopy boob, you know what I mean? Where it's just
it would definitely
it just would be bad.
Because normally they're kind of around your yoke and chest area anyway, aren't they? And actually that's the important bit that you want to actually have fitting well and up. Yeah.
So that's where sometimes I will add grosgrain ribbon to the inside of my garments to hold the weight of the garment up here.
What's it
grosgrain ribbon.
Gross
grain. It's spelled like gross grain.
Yeah.
Grosgrain. And so you add that to like where your seam would be or around your collar. And it's not only when you add beads, but I got to take this out. I can't hardly hear myself. But when you're doing any sort of, especially like an oversized garment or a plus size garment, it helps hold the weight of everything.
Yes.
But you had that same theory when you're going to add beads. It helps hold the weight of everything and the structure of your garment.
Brilliant.
Nice. Oh, we've got people coming in. Hi, everyone. Joanne's here saying hello. Helen said, I've never considered beading ever, but that headband belt you had in the video, I have to make that. Yeah, I love it.
That was so cute. That was originally going to be a full shawl for inside crochet there in Europe. And I got that far and I was like, nope.
That is the thing, isn't it? Like with garments as well, it adds not necessarily complexity, but it will add time, won't it? It will.
Oh yeah. So that's when I got it that far. I remember I reached out. I think her name was Claire, and I was like, "Hey, what do you think about?" And she was like, "I love it." I said, "Great." So that's how that happened. Yep.
Oh, and we've got someone here saying, I've used beads in crochet purses, but that's it. I love the idea of using them for garments. And again, this whole weekend, haven't we? We were trying to introduce new ideas to people, new inspiration, new things that you can try. You don't have to try them all, but just think about it. Think about how it can work for you.
You'll definitely have lots of options to try things this weekend.
Definitely. And Joanne's asking, would using sequins be the same concept as adding beads?
So I would say yes, you could. I think the hardest part with sequins would be that the little tiny hole is really tiny. I think with sequins, I would even add it like with thread. You know what I mean? I would thread it through with sequins. That's what I mean. I've actually never used sequins in that manner. That would be my initial thought, though, is that's what I would do.
One thing with the sequins, if you're adding them afterwards, all I would say is like add a few, then cut and tie it off. Then start again, because if you do it in one continuous kind of thread, if that breaks at some point, a whole lot's coming out. I've had a sequin jacket, and it was really cheap, let's be honest. It was just a cheap jacket. and it kind of gave way at the top, and it was just like falling off me. I was like a Christmas tree shedding its needles after the time. It was like falling off me. I was like,
oh
okay,
no,
that was really cheap. So if you do it, I would say do a bit, tie off, and then maybe do it row by row. That if one gives in, the whole thing's gonna not gonna shed like a cat.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. One of the things with beads, so besides like garments and stuff, I have added beads. I designed a shawl years ago for a magazine, and it was using the Peyton's bamboo yarn. I don't even know if they have that around anymore, but bamboo has a very beautiful shine and a nice stretch, and it's just really pretty. But I wanted to add some weight to really open up the crochet lace. So I added like a string of beads, like really beautiful assortment of beads, and then had a beautiful tie at the bottom. So instead of fringe, it was fringe with beads.
Oh, nice.
And it was gorgeous because you could put it on, right? And it had a little bit of weight, but then the minute you put it over your shoulder, like it just wasn't falling off. It was so good. So just for those of you who are so new to crochet garments and you make shawls, like this is one way you can add it into that. Yeah.
Before we get to this question, I have just remembered in the depths of my mind, I forget all these things. I have used beading in crochet before for a hammock, a full-sized hammock. I had a magazine. Yes.
Wow.
I had this magazine commission once, many years ago, because they always used to give me the ones of like, make a tagine cover, Hannah, or make a I'd be like, yeah, sure, make a cactus. Okay.
Instantly regretting a decision.
Yeah. Honestly, I forgot all these things. And it was a hammock, and it was really, and they were really heavy, thick beads because it was made in this thick yarn. And I made like a scalloped edge for it with beading on it. I've no idea where it is or where it went or where.
Okay.
That's a huge project. I was assigned a rug once, and I was like, really? A rug? Okay, I'll make a rug. That's what you want.
Anyway. Or a dollhouse.
Being asked, I
would have been out.
A doll's house. Oh my god. I use a beadle needle. Have I said that right? When knitting, do you think it would work with crochet or a beading needle? Maybe it's a beading needle.
I'm gonna Google it. I'm gonna look it up, and then I'll tell you. Hold on.
Yeah.
Beadle needle.
Beadle needle.
Are we gonna learn something new here?
I don't know. I've never used this before. I don't even know. Oh, now it thinks I'm a robot. Hold on. I gotta do all the things.
Prove your worth.
How ironic is that, right? A beadle. I've never used a beadle needle.
What is it? What is it?
It kind of looks like a crochet hook needle. Hold on. Let me put it in the private chat for you so you can see. This is from Amazon.
So if it's now everyone Googling what a beadle needle is.
I mean, my thought is, you got one of those? I mean, if it stacks up all the beads to where, you pull your loop off and then put a bead on, you could absolutely use that.
Right.
I have one of those, but I didn't know what it was. So my husband's aunt, I got left her sewing box, and it had absolutely everything in it, including cigarettes and a lighter that she obviously hid in there.
That's awesome.
All of her buttons, all of her threads and everything, and it's got one of those in it. So now I know what it is.
I have never used a beadle needle. Learn something new every day. But my instinct is that you absolutely could do that.
But don't you just love the name, a beadle needle?
A beadle needle. That's perfect. Perfect marketing.
So, is it possible to repair the loss of a bead?
So, yes, but it would take a little bit more than just adding a bead in. So, if you've ever repaired crochet, where you've had to cut, the crochet out and even crochet out over whatever around it, and then recreate the crochet, you'd recreate it with the bead in and then put it back in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The other thing is, if you were preloading your yarn with beads, and maybe you got a color out of sequins or whatever, you could always break the yarn and then rejoin the yarn to get the color back in sequence. Or maybe you have an extra bead in there. That's where you could take some as long as you have protective eye gear, like wire cutters or whatever, if it's a glass bead, and literally break the bead off, and just be careful not to cut your yarn. So yes, it's just not as easy as you might think. And then if you have something where something's completely done and you don't want to cut out stuff, you could always use just sewing thread to kind of make it look like it's mimicked what's in there. So it just, yeah, like anything else, you could repair it and just mimic what it should look like.
Be inventive. Just
exactly.
There you go.
Yeah. And have a go. Have a go. Don't be frightened of having a go.
Failing all of the above, fabric glue. Just stick a bit of glue on it.
Love it. Love it. This is a really good
That's
tip.
what I would do when I lose patience with it.
Yeah. Oh, it'll be fine. Carrie saying with sequins, you need to keep it in place with a small seed bead. That's a brilliant idea. Did that on the shoes for my sister's wedding. That's a fab idea.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I was thinking about that. Yes, absolutely. That's a good idea.
Everyone's saying about the beadle needle, saying it looks like a dental flosser.
Oh, you could use dental floss. That actually, the circle with the, I know of a lot of my friends who use that as a way they pick up beads. So like the solid part, they use that to pick up beads. And then the circle part, they put the yarn through so that it just feed it right on.
Oh, that's
right.
Yeah. Well, and Darlene's asking then, so I prefer to add beads as I go rather than stringing. What are your thoughts?
I do too, because I like to change my mind as I go. And when I pre-string,
I wondered about that. Yeah,
that's too much pre-planning for me. And you girls know, pre-planning and I don't get along very well.
I don't believe it, Molly. I don't believe it.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, like almost most of the stuff I have designed, it has been adding the bead as you go. Very few is it pre-strung. Like my jewelry is different. We pre-strung those and because we knew what we were going for. But when it comes to most garments and stuff, I don't pre-string. I add them as I go. It's a personal preference, I think, with some people. For me, it really is. I blame everything on ADHD anymore. Like the more I find out how ADHD I am, there are certain things I do. I'm like, oh, now I know why. And honestly, pre-stringing things is just too much of a commitment for me. So I like to add a bead as I go.
No, I get that as well. I wouldn't, I would like the maths of it. I would like the challenge of figuring it out, but then I would hate the fact that because as a designer and being creative, I hate being told this is what you have. I'm not very good at being told what to do. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but I really like, I like to do my own thing and I like to bend the rules. So I'm a bit like, and when you're designing as well, it is a different thing, isn't it?
Yes.
And you have to be able to be creative. And if you free-strung stuff, then what on earth do you do with it if you don't want it?
Yeah, that's not my gig. I'm not really a fan of that. Now, if I'm doing a knitting project where I know I'm going to add it like every so often, it's just one color of beads. Yeah, I'll pre-string those. But for the most part, I add a bead as I go. Good. There you go.
Oh, and so Tish then very helpfully asked, how do you add a bead as you go, Molly?
So I make sure I have a crochet hook. I don't have any of them right here next to me. That's small enough to go through whatever the bead hole is. And remember the lower the number of the beads. So like a 6 millimeter bead is actually bigger than an 8 millimeter bead. Those of us who in America who would be like, oh, does that make, does that make sense? You know what I mean? Because for you guys, that makes sense to you. Like for us, we're like, oh, 8 is bigger than 6. It would be bigger. Like that's not, just letting you know, that's not how the rest of the world thinks. So you have to make sure that your hook, I know these are the things you learn. You have to make sure your hook can get through the bead itself. And then when I get to the stitch I want to add a bead to, I literally take the loop off my hook, take the crochet hook that has the bead on it and grab the loop and then
force the bead down.
Yep, that's what I do.
Makes sense. Makes
sense.
So
then the bead is actually like it's strangling the loop of the stitch.
Yeah.
How much does that affect the tension of your work? Is it ever a problem?
It makes it a little taller, if you're gonna depending, but not a lot. Like if I've decided to do that, I've pre-planned it in my gauge swatch, so I if it's too like if my bead is too big that it's going to really disrupt everything, then I know that's not the right fit. So that's usually what I will do for that.
Because I'm thinking like in terms of garments, obviously, like if it changes it a small amount but then you do a huge amount of beading on it, it might make a considerable difference.
Yeah, it's little things like that you have to think of, right?
Yeah.
But if it's just this little ton of nugget of a piece, like maybe around your ribbing or something, it's not so bad.
Yeah.
I bet one question I had loads of questions on your thing, like cost wise as well. How I've never ever purchased beads, I don't think, other than in like a big bag. Like if you're making a really nice garment in really nice yarn, do you need to buy fancy beads, or is it okay to not buy fancy?
Okay, so here's my honest answer. So first off, Hannah, when you come to my house, you're gonna see my whole bead collection. Like, it's amazing. But this is gonna sound funny, just like I didn't know yarn stores existed when I first started working with yarn. I didn't know bead stores existed. I just didn't know it was a thing. So I always bought all of my beads at Joann's or Michael's or stuff, which they have a great bead selection. It's just that when you're gonna do a garment or something along the lines, something that you're making to look really nice, or for a paid for piece or whatnot, you typically want your beads to all be the same size, the hole to be the same size, the bead to be the same size, to be very uniform. And if I'm saying this correctly, there are some beads that I think it's the like seed beads, check seed beads and stuff that you can get at like Hobby Lobby and Michael's and Joann's and places like that. You'll notice that some of them are oddly shaped, and some of the holes are the wrong size. Whereas there is a distinct bead, I want to say it's like Mayakomi or something. I don't know. I don't know the right words. There are brands that it's very precise beading, that they're precise beads. Having said all that, one of my very, very good friends, the whole reason I'm on YouTube at all, her name is Jill Wiseman. Jill Wiseman Designs has an online beading store that she does. And if you ever need help choosing the correct beads or whatever, she's also a knitter. She's dabbled with crochet. She absolutely can help you out choosing the right beads. So if you're looking for an online store, a private entity, a woman-owned business that you want to support because you're going for beads, Jill Wiseman Designs is a great place to go and check out if you're going to be at that next level. It's like the head wrap piece that I was showing, I bought those beads at a bead store. They were specific beads because I wanted them to all be very uniform and the same. Whereas like the beads we did for the necklace and stuff that we did for game day several years ago, we bought those beads at Michael's and such. And the little minute differences and stuff didn't really make that much of a difference for what we were making.
Projects.
Right. Now, if it was something where I was putting a lot more work into it and I was going to sell like an art piece, I would definitely go and get higher end beads. But did that answer your question? Wiseman Designs.
Japanese beads. Japanese beads and my Yuki beads.
See, I was close. I was like, I know that there's something like that. I was close. But those are wonderful beads. I own some of those. And you're always going to need more beads than you think you need. Just a heads up on that. Like you're going to be like, oh, I have like 7 vials. That's plenty. And then you're like through 2 rows. You're like, oh no. So you always need more than what you think you need. Yeah.
My great aunt used to, I've got such a vision of her doing it. She used to do beaded embroidery, and the way she would pick up her beads for it, she would lick her finger and put it down and get and the amount of beads that she swallowed. She was like and so she always bought so many more because she was just like, I just eat my beads. I just eat my, because there's one, like left on a finger from before.
Like it's a Tic Tac.
Honestly, glittery ones.
That is hilarious. That is so funny. You know what I like? I kind of talking about tools and stuff. Like there's a beading, I don't know what it's called. I'm so terrible. Like a beater bowl. Like it's a bowl and it has like a post that comes through it, and you can turn it and it turns the bowl. And then you can get this it looks like a fishing hook. It's like a long needle with a hook. So you put the hook in there, your seed beads are in the bowl, and you turn the bowl, and the seed beads just go right up that needle, and so that you can thread them right on. Like it's fantastic. It's the coolest thing. Like if you guys are like me, like you find a new craft and you got to have all the things. Like I have all the things. That is like one of the coolest tools. I love it. Yeah, it's great.
Awesome.
Kim's just asked if we post the link for the power pack, and I have put it in the comments. That is in there. And then a question here is, do beads have lots like yarn?
I don't think so. I I haven't seen any. I'm sure, I mean, there could be some really unique beads that maybe are have lots, but I don't know. That is beyond my information
Yeah,
source. So
I
that would
don't
be a great
know.
question that we could find
I
out somewhere else.
They would come, I suppose they would come in batches, but like, because you see them in like
Mhm.
in
Like
shops, don't you? In
tubes and stuff.
tubes. Yeah. So I
Mhm.
assume they would come in a tube, but yeah, I don't know if that necessarily has been made as a batch or not.
Yeah, I don't know.
But you
That
often
is a
get
question for a beater.
good question. That's a
A
good
very
question.
good
It's kind of
question.
like buttons, isn't it? I find like nowadays, not that I'm that old, but I feel like nowadays buttons aren't as consistent as they used to be. I don't know
So
if you,
I agree with you.
they're really not.
When I lived in Colorado, the company that owned buttons.com actually lived in Colorado. I think it was JHB Buttons or something like that. And they sold to somebody else because it was a family-owned company and they sold to somebody else. And I just feel like the buttons just aren't the same anymore. I was like, oh. But when I go to different trade shows and stuff, and there'll be like vendors there with vintage buttons, like they'll go to a button factory from Europe somewhere and they're like, these are buttons circa blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, they're the most beautiful buttons. So like my bead collection, I have a button collection like nobody's business. Like I have so many buttons. Some of them I'm afraid to use. Some of them I pin in place for the picture and then I remove them. And then I'm like,
save them.
Play buttons.
no, you don't get to use this one, which is why I really love the jewel pedestal. I've used them so much. They're over there. The jewel pedestal buttons. Here, I'm gonna find a link and share it with you because you can pin them through your stuff and it's like a screw that screws on.
Oh, I see what you mean.
They're the best thing ever. I'm telling you, they're not cheap, but listen, you get to reuse them because they don't have to stay on the pieces. They are so great. Hold on, I'm going to give you the link because
while you do that, I'm going to just put this code up because we've got people asking about, because obviously we're coming to the end of this and then we've got one more presentation, which is Michelle's about using motifs for crochet garments. And then that's it. We're done. If you have a free ticket, you have then 24 hours to watch everything that you would like to watch, and then that will disappear. But if you would like to upgrade for the VIP ticket, then you can still do that. But as of tomorrow morning, the price will be going up to its regular price. So if you are interested in getting that VIP ticket, then scan this QR code here, and the link is in the description absolutely everywhere that we are. So if you want that, go grab it.
All right, so I just sent you guys a link to the jewel buttons.
Awesome.
The trickiest thing here is that, like, if you have, like, I have a garment that's coming out next week that the collar folds over like this, so you have both sides of the collar that fold. So if I was going to go like this, the pedestal's not quite long enough. But if I want to use it on this, it's perfect. Does that make sense? Yeah. So those are, they are not cheap. Like I said, they are so worth the money because you can switch them in and out. I use them for the turkey trot sweaters that we did this year. They are amazing. They're amazing.
Amazing.
Harley, we're out of time. We're going to have to.
I know.
How is that possible? It's because I talk too much. I'm sorry.
I know. So we have one presentation to go. It's already on its countdown over on Michelle's Days Off the Hooks channel. So Molly, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
You've been amazing.
See you in a half an hour, everyone.
Okay.
Oh, I can't find my mouse to turn this off.